Hello. All right. Whew. It has been such a long time since I've gone live that I had to relearn everything. And I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just a little bit more complicated than it used to be. Maybe it's exactly the same and I've just been out of it for a while, but doesn't really matter. I'm here. I made it. Hi, everyone. It's me, Tigrila. How is everything going? It has literally been, like I said, ages since I've been live. I have been preferring to write a lot more. And just recently, I decided that, yeah, it's time to start kind of like talking a little bit more in different aspects. I could tell you about, but I'm going to just kind of dive into the reason that I decided to go live today. And it was inspired by an article that I just read. Now, I should preface this by saying that you guys know me, I'm kind of a lateral thinker. I sort of think outside the box, and there's a lot of concepts and ideas that come and are explored, especially in the naturally conscious community that I host, that we have like all kinds of different discussions on how is it that the plant mind really helps us to transform, to see the world differently, to become more successful, to move into new forms of development, to really move forward and evolve in harmony with our planet. And I today was alerted to an article about the about NotreDame. I mean, NotreDame, a very famous church in Paris. Everybody kind of knows who NotreDame is. And if you remember, the topmost layer of it burned down recently. And they have decided, the city of Paris has decided that it will be rebuilt exactly the way it was before. Now, there was lots of other proposals. There was proposals to give it a glass ceiling. There was proposals to create something that sort of had a modern feel into a traditional medieval church. I mean, there was so many different proposals that came in, and ultimately they decided none of them were good enough, that they were going to go back to the original intention of the church, back to the way that was originally built, and really kind of just go backwards in time, which is a choice. I mean, it was not the choice I would have made more than anything, especially because it would have been an amazing, for me at least, I see it as an amazing opportunity to kind of forge forward, to bring religion into a new intersection with where we are today as humanity, where we are today as a planet, to bring kind of like a modern touch to it by integrating everything that we've learned about construction and architecture and how places like this traditional church really create culture and create home. I mean, what an amazing opportunity it could have been. But they chose otherwise. And who am I to judge? No one. So, but there's always a but here, and this is where the plants kind of come in. There was an article that came out recently stating that they have started to fell 150-year-old oaks in order to build back the cathedral. Let me rephrase this. No, let me just state it again. 150-year-old oaks from the forests around Paris, right? Now, they did kind of say that some of these were slated to be cut down already as part of forest management. But the amount necessary seems a little impossible and improbable that they were already planning on cutting down that large a quantity of, again, 150-year-old oaks. Which goes to a question that I was just asked yesterday. Yesterday, I was speaking with a woman who hosts a podcast on home remodeling. She's an architect. She had me to come on to the podcast. I'm doing the interview next week to speak about plants. And she says, look, I am a traditional architect. I know nothing. I mean, yes, we've had like landscape architects and architecture, and I love plants, but I actually have never really thought about a lot of these concepts relating to using plants and in our construction. Specifically, we're talking about the built environment, the construction. And I sometimes get a little bit freaked out. Like, I don't know what's right or wrong. Like, should we be using plants? Should we not be using plants? What should we be doing? All these types of things, which is a great question to be had. So, which is why when this thing about NotreDame came on, I was like, you know, maybe it's time to come back on live and have some of these conversations. Now, again, this is meant to be a conversation. You guys know how I am. I really love for us to be chit-chatting about this. I don't necessarily mean for this to be something that's just one way. Hey, Veronica, nice to have you here. I want it to be a conversation because honestly, some of us we don't really have the solutions. Let me just say this outline, like straight up. I don't have this strong stance. I have a gut feeling. I have an interaction with plants. I have knowledge, and I'm trying to put them all together in a way that helps us moving forward. Now, we talk about it a lot, that we do want to construct, we want with natural materials, which of course means plants. I mean, we're seeing it everywhere, vegan leather, we're seeing all kinds of things. And of course that requires the death of plants. So the question I guess I'm posing, and the thing that came up to me with this whole situation with NotreDame is, what does that really look like? Like, what are the limits? What are the bounds? When is it appropriate? When is it not appropriate? You know, 150-year-old oaks, I don't know, just, I mean, seems gut instinct wise, like, why are we just murdering all these plants? I mean, that's kind of the gut instinct, right? Why are we murdering these plants to rebuild a church? Which is not a judgment on the church, by the way. It's not at all, but it's kind of to the longevity of the plants. But then again, would it be better if it was a whole mess of, I don't know, 50-year-old oaks? Would it change? Would it change if it was 25-year-old? Like, is the appropriate measure? And I think the answer lies, and here's where I want, you know, I'd love for you guys to be a part of this discussion, and we can continue it on here. We can continue it on in the naturally conscious community. Is what is the appropriate way for us as, you know, plant inspired, plant connected individuals, people connected to the plant kingdom, or with the plant kingdom, better said, to approach construction projects? What is the best way for us to approach the materials that will, you know, the beings that will eventually be the materials with which you share your home? I mean, we go a little bit into this and reconnect with the plant kingdom, you know, in that course, and I believe it is week 6, we talk about food, and that expands out into things like, you know, your clothing and your construction and natural materials and such. And I guess the answer for me lies in the amount, kind of similar to when we do kind of the boot camp, and when we talk about like the boot camp is in Kickstart Your Conscious Revolution boot camp. But when we talk about the idea of my characteristics, right, is I need to know how much and when to use them. And I think that it really kind of comes back to this. It really goes down to, what is the relationship that I have with these trees, with these plants, with whatever kind of plant that it is, in the process of choosing which ones will become a part of, for example, in this case, the church. And then from there, there's the relationship that I have with them in order to choose, in order for us to co-choose, to choose together. Then there is the way that they are, you know, cut down, and the experiences and such that have, and then afterwards it's the use of the materials and the way that it gets used. To me, the thing about the NotreDame, besides the fact that it's 150-year-old oaks and the number of 150-year-old oaks that is so discouraging, let me just use that word, discouraging or difficult, is the fact that, one, you could have created it using a combination of materials so that you do not have like all these ancient oaks with all their experience being just felled for the church. That's the first thing. 2, I would love to know, because maybe you guys are doing it and I don't know, I would love to know, what are the practices being used to choose these trees, to ensure that these are the trees that are the best trees for such a sacred space that you want to create. 3, what are the rituals or experiences or modalities, whatever words you want to use, that you are planning on using in order to incorporate the wisdom of these trees, what these trees really have to offer into the construction process, so that their lives actually have meaning and continue on. So in the selection process, you give the trees time to share and to pass on everything that they want to pass on to the webs of life in which they're connected, whether that's nourishment, whether that's wisdom, whatever your belief system from a scientific to a spiritual perspective is. So having that conversation with these trees of saying, you know, we have selected together for you to give your lives to this, because we know that plants are related in this way, so that they know that this is part of what their existence on this planet is in this particular world that we're in. But afterwards, they still hold and retain their life experience. And so therefore, what is, especially in such a sacred space as NotreDame, what is the way that we as humans are going to work with these felled trees, not just as dead material, but as living beings that passed on, but that still have other experiences to pass on as they are a part of this building. In other words, how do we turn these buildings into living buildings where the natural materials used are able to share their wisdom with the people that experience this, so that their lives truly have meaning? This is, I guess, the question. This is the thing that's rolling through my head all day long today. This is the thing that keeps kind of just jerking and going and going and jerking and moving, is how do we do this? How can we give meaning to each and every plant that gives their lives for us to have an object, a piece of clothing, a desk, a house, whatever that may be? Okay, that's my question to you. And we've got comments, so please throw these into the comments and let's have a conversation about this.